So we have business owners
Okay.
who own trucks and stuff out on the roads. All right.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there. Some of them are sitting there going, "Why does Rob have Dave on, man? He's like the enemy." I want to talk about that.
Okay.
I think that'd
That's
be fun.
good. Yeah.
So we'll do that.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. Man, it's really great to be back. I'm actually doing back-to-back podcasts today. But I'm rolling now, man. We're going to do this.
You're on fire.
And I'm really excited because I have my good friend here, David Godsey. David, welcome.
Thank you, Rob, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so this all started, you and I were just kind of hanging out, I think having a cigar.
That's right.
And very successful attorney, very successful, and pretty much renowned throughout the country for their success. And we started talking about it. It's just like, hey man, how did all this get going? And your story is fascinating.
Oh, appreciate that.
I mean, and just the level of growth and the ability to scale, it fascinates me because I know a lot of attorneys, and I think attorneys are a lot like, like our space, service, right? A lot like kind of what we do. Really hard to scale sometimes because, it's that expertise that we feel like is our product, you know?
Right.
And so therefore, a lot of times we just kind of hold on to that and we're never able to really actually hire smarter people and things like that.
That's right.
Does that sound
Absolutely.
familiar?
That's exactly the way it was. And furthermore, not a lot of business being taught at law school. You just know, I call it making the burgers. Like we knew how to make our burgers. And we just like, hey, we want to make our burgers. It wasn't until we kind of self-educated and read books like The E-Myth by Michael Gerber and Scale. And, you realize, okay, there's a way we can grow this thing. So,
So you've done it. And I got to hear a lot of the story 2 weeks ago, I guess, when we were sitting and visiting. I was like, man, you need to come on. And then here you are.
Yeah.
So tell us the story, just kind of from, first of all, how did you decide that you wanted to be an attorney?
Right. So, first of all, thanks again for having me. I got out of college and I became an insurance adjuster, handling auto claims with Progressive. And Progressive at the time was probably about the 30th largest insurance carrier in the world or in the country. And they had this real aggressive CEO by the name of Peter Lewis. And Peter came in and said, hey, we're gonna grow. And so Progressive started this thing called immediate response claims handling, where they were showing up to the scene of the accident and kind of same day claims handling service, which had never been done before by the big state farms in all states of the world.
Okay.
And so I bring that up because there was a lot of growth within the company. By the time I left 8 years later, they were the fourth and or fifth largest insurance carrier, depending on, how the stats were that day, just behind State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, Farmers, and then they would go back and forth between Nationwide.
Sure,
So they became really big, which means they grew really fast, which means people who weren't really qualified to become leaders, like myself, could become leaders. And so I took a team lead position here in Dallas. I was in Houston at the time when I started, and I got promoted and came to Dallas. And one of the guys I worked with was going to school at then Texas Wesleyan School of Law, and he was on a part-time program. And he was telling me about it, and I said, well, I'm kind of going to ride this management wave with Progressive. That's what I'm going to do. And then one day I called a lawyer working on a case. I was managing the Duncanville office, and I called a lawyer. I don't even remember her name. I just remember that someone answered the phone, and I said, can I speak to lawyer, whoever she was? And the person who answered the phone says, are you calling about someone whose last name ends in A through M or N through Z? I gave her the last name. She said, oh, you need to speak to this person. So I talked to that person, handled my call, got off the phone. And I remember thinking, I've never heard of this lawyer. She's never been on phone books, commercials, or anything, but she's making enough money to pay herself. whoever handles A through M, whoever handles N through Z, and probably the lady who answered the phone.
Got an operation.
Yeah. So I just went down to Texas Wesleyan the next day and talked to their admissions people, and we talked about my undergraduate career and what I'd need to make on the LSAT to get in, and so that's what I did, and then got in, and always knew that I had learned what I was going to do from Progressive, how to handle.
Yeah, I was going to say, so how did that translate? So you had a base level of knowledge that was going to make you successful.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, what were some of those things?
So, for everything you do, there's fundamentals, right? In basketball, for example, I'm a huge basketball fan, right? It's passing, dribbling, shooting, defending, right? Doesn't matter if you're in the NBA or if you're in your kid's city league, right? That's just, those fundamentals have to be there. Well, in the insurance world, when car accidents happen, there has to be coverage, liability, and damages, right? And Progressive used to drill that into me, right? If you hit, and that's kind of the three-legged table. If one of those legs is missing, you don't have a case, right? And so, in other words, if somebody who hits you does not have coverage or insurance, no case, right? You could sue them, but it'd be worth the paper it's written on because there's no insurance company to pay it. You have to have liability, right? It means the person has to be at fault if they hit you, and then you have to have damages. I mean, you have to be hurt, or there has to be some lost wage or some other recognized damage under the law. So I knew I could build a plaintiff's practice. I knew what I was looking for. Whoever we could attract as clients, they were going to have those three legs. And then all of obviously with each of those legs, there are nuances and all those things, but I had picked up how to handle those nuances through what I got from Progressive. And so it's just a matter now of how can we make the phone ring? And for me, I lucked out because I grew up with a guy who happened to be a genius at marketing.
A marketing genius, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure a lot of the folks that are listening are familiar with IJustGotHit.com, right? So that's you.
That's it. I'm half.
You're half of it. Yeah. That's your firm. That's IJustGotHit.com. Right. So I think the phone rings probably like all the time.
It does.
So give us an idea, like what's the volume of some of that? I know you have some metrics that you use.
Yeah, and this, to be clear, so we don't get in trouble with the state bar. The name of the firm is Godsey Martin, my last name, my law partner's last name, and obviously we advertise under IJustGotHit.com. But we represent anywhere between 500 and 600 clients every month. We have office in Dallas and an office in Houston, and so a part of what we do is going out and marketing and having a conversation with the market. As you can imagine, everybody doesn't have a car wreck every day. And so our marketing strategy was built around how can we become an option if and when the need arises for someone in the market. And so that obviously requires a lot of advertising and a lot of strategy within the advertising. One of the things that we learned early on is that our competitors, most of them we call it beat your chest marketing, right? I am this type of lawyer. Yeah. I have recovered this. I am experienced. I can settle your case. I can try your case. And then there's speed and greed marketing, right? We'll do it fast and get you the most money. But what we've done is what we call rung on the ladder marketing. And so the best analogy I use is one time I heard my pastor talking and he was saying, he was trying to talk about how the Bible is a living word, right? And that it applies no matter how long ago it was written, it just applies. And it applies to people differently. And he said, sometimes I can give a sermon and somebody will come up to me and say, oh, Pastor Davis, that was a great sermon, and he'll say, well, what'd you like about it? And they'll say, oh, well, you said ABC. And then he could finish that conversation and another person will walk up to him and say, that was a great sermon. And they say, really, what'd you like about it? Oh, well, you said XYZ, right? So it's a different thing that people heard.
So is that what the ladder means?
That's what the ladder means. So if you think of
a series of different places where you can touch somebody.
And different people will be touched by different messaging within that same spot. So we may talk about what it's like for you to sit in a cold emergency room, not knowing how you're going to get to work tomorrow. We may talk about all the money we've recovered. We may talk about how fast it will be and how we're going to be able to get this done without you being any more inconvenienced than you already are. We may talk about what our recoveries are. So there's just a lot of different things that we'll touch on within each spot. Now, when we started advertising, there were no lawyers on radio. zero. Now,
When was this?
This was back in 2008.
Okay.
And so, in fact, we had met with a couple of advertising firms who told us, radio's not going to work. And it's funny, I was listening to a podcast this morning on the way to work, and it was saying you got to be delusional in order to be successful. You got to believe something nobody else believes.
Right.
And so we were delusional. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, it's going to work.
I was like, hey, well, the truth of the matter is we couldn't afford TV, right? We didn't have any money for that. And we really couldn't afford primetime radio. But we knew we could do what the radio station calls rotators, which is, hey, if there happens to be an open spot, in their inventory, then they'll just throw you in. And you might get, the ride to work, which is the high end.
Yeah.
But more than likely, you're going to get like 2 a.m. or somewhere where not a lot of ears are listening. But we just believed it could work in radio. And what we could afford at the time was what the radio stations call the Sunday drive to church. So we did a lot of urban radio. And on Sunday, during the week, they play R&B and hip hop. On Sunday, they would do gospel music for a few hours because they knew people were riding to and from church. And so that was cheap radio. And a lot of businesses didn't want to advertise then because they felt like people weren't going to listen to gospel music as much as they would listen to R&B and hip hop. And so we were able to get in a cheap way and invested that way and got some cases. And when we got some money, we just bought some more ads.
Yeah, and just kept going.
Yeah,
okay.
kept reinvesting. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine. So obviously the marketing is a huge part of your success. But at the same time, if you're running 500 cases a month, the operations has to keep up with that as well.
Absolutely.
I would suspect that at some point it was like, oh my gosh, what? Yeah. How do we do this?
Yeah, and I will tell you, we had answers to how you do it, and we had the wrong answers.
Okay,
everybody knows about all the success, but boy, we screwed it up along the way. Trust me.
So I love those stories.
Yeah.
So tell us kind of where you went wrong and had to fix. Give us an example.
So a part of our problem was that we were blessed enough to have rapid growth, and what we did as we started to grow, we'd say, hey, I need somebody to help answer the phone. And then it turned into, well, I need somebody to kind of work with the client while they're in treatment, and I'll do the rest. And then it turned into, I also need somebody to help negotiate settlements on the cases that aren't going to go to litigation because I'm handling litigation. And then that turned into, well, I need somebody who's going to order all of the affidavits that I need in connection with the medical bills and records for cases that are going to litigation. And so all of those basically became departments without us putting any thought into it. It just needs someone else to answer the phone. Well, that's a receptionist department.
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, it sounds like you were pushing off, the things that it didn't require you specifically, right? That makes perfect sense to me.
Well, it made perfect sense to us at the time. The problem was that as we grew into departments, this is where we ran into an issue. We started to rely on those people who were coming into those departments. And it was, hey, as long as we have so-and-so, we're going to be good. But when so-and-so leaves to go to a new job or leaves for whatever reason, or so-and-so gets promoted to another position, then we were left to say, oh, now what are we going to do? In other words, we were not relying on processes. We were relying on people.
Okay.
And gotcha. And we had to learn that, people let you down, right? And including me, I'm a person, right? And I let people I love down, right? And so but processes never let you down, right? And so we had to learn to say, all right, let's develop processes in each of these areas. And then as we did that, it's still trial and error. Some of these processes aren't profitable. Some of these processes don't generate revenue. Some of these processes generate more revenue and less profit. So it's a constant juggling act with how are we going to fine tune these things? And it continues to go on, right? Where we continue to look at things and say, all right, are we doing what's best? Obviously first for our clients. And then that's one. The 1A is for our business, right? It's not 2 because it is a business at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And so we're there to make a profit and we've got to, do those things that work. But we've come to rely a lot more on processes. And and just to say that really doesn't do it justice. With anything we want to create, here's what needs to happen. One, we have to create a roadmap for how it's going to get from A to Z. right? So we say, this is how we're going to order bills and records, right? We're going to, call these people. We're going to send these letters. We're going to follow up at this time. We give the process A to Z.
I bet that's tough too.
And it can be. And then there's all these external factors that you have no control over. But coming up with the A to Z is step one. Step two is you got to also come up with the training. And we learned the hard way, telling isn't training, right? I read that in a book. I wish I could remember which book it is because I don't want to be a plagiarist, but it's just so true. And for years, we would go around and say, hey, all you got to do is this, this, and this. And then when somebody didn't do it, we say, hey, I told you to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then they, people let you down. So come up with the A to Z, come up with the training, and then you got to come up with the management piece, right? So I'm going to tell you what to do, and then I got to go back and look all the time to make sure you're doing it.
Yeah, that accountability.
And if you don't do that.
That does sound kind of flat to me. So it sounds like you've got all these departments across, and then like just you and your partner right above them.
Well, we have managers as well. So in receptionists are, we have probably 6 or 7 receptionists because we have a lot of phone volume. And we call them guest experience because they're the first contact with our clients. And whatever words you choose for your departments, so tell all your listeners.
That's important.
It matters. Yeah. You got to be saying the right stuff to put the right energy out there. And so we want our clients to have a great experience. So that's our guest experience team. And they have a manager that can, monitor how much time they're spending on the phone, what it is that they're doing when they're transferring the calls. Are they making warm transfers? Are they making cold transfers? What's their energy like? Are they smiling through the phone? So it's constant feedback that's happening there. Those folks will go to our intake department where we have an intake manager. That's the group that talks to all of our potential clients and figures out they have those 3 legs I talked about. And we've added a 4th leg, which is fit. There was a time where we were signing about 800 clients a month and our drop rate was up and our revenue generation was not where we desired it to be. And we realized that we were signing a lot of clients who just weren't a fit for our firm, meaning that they weren't going to be compliant with what the doctor was asking them to do. They weren't going to show up to treatment. They weren't going to get whatever procedures the doctor was asking them to do. And so we kind of asked that on the front end now. And it cost us, some clients seemingly, but, all that we're on back-to-back revenue generating, record years. So I think we're on to something in figuring out that fit. But in the end, that intake group says,
they've got to do that. So the intake is doing the fit.
Yeah, that's like a sales group. Right?
That's important.
Yeah, that's super important.
So what are some of the things that they're trying to key on to make sure that they're going to be a fit, that's going to be a client that's going to fulfill their portion of the
Number one, they want to make sure that the client was not at fault, right? We can only help people where liability is adverse to some other tortfeasor. Right?
Okay.
There are a lot of people, believe it or not, who will call us and say, hey, I just rear-ended Rob on the highway and I want you guys to represent me because my neck and back hurt. And we'll say, well, we can't help you because it's your fault, right? So liability has to be there. And then number 2, we're looking for coverage, right? Is there insurance out there? Is there a pocket of recovery? Unless you get hit by Jerry Jones, most people aren't going to have enough money to cover it. And if you get hit by Jerry Jones, he's going to have insurance. So really just need to have insurance. And then you got to make sure they're hurt. Some people say, hey, man, they tore my car up, but I'm not hurt. And we say, great, glad you're not hurt, but we can't help you. And, you can go search for somebody who tries to do property damage only if you want assistance with that. But that's hard to find because most lawyers who do what I do want to do it for the injury. And then we want to tell them up front, now listen, you're going to go through a series of treatment and it's going to start off maybe 5 times a week for the first couple of weeks. Then it's going to go to 3 times a week. And we're going to find you a place that's convenient to where you live or work, whatever you decide. But there's a commitment that you need to make in order to go through this process. And are you going to be able to make that commitment? And if they say yes, great. If they say, well, I didn't know it was that much, then we just say, hey, doesn't mean you don't have a case, you're just not a fit for us. And
so what's that treatment about? So what is that?
Right.
That's just, obviously they're injured, they need treatment, but then that's a lot.
It is. So we can't, as lawyers, we can't make your pain go away. We can't make your inconvenience go away, pain and suffering. We can only get you compensated for it.
Okay.
Well, in order for us to find out how much you're entitled to be compensated, we have to know how hurt you are, right? And the more hurt you are, the more you're entitled to compensation, generally speaking, right? There's a couple of
Makes sense.
Exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, whoever's hurt the most gets the most. And so we don't know how hurt you are. We're lawyers, not doctors. So you'll go off to a doctor that we'll send you to, and they'll put you through a bunch of testing, and they'll make diagnoses that need to be made or diagnoses, and they'll treat that. And in the end, they put all of that in the records, and then they get it to us. Now, what we have come to find out is that there's really only two types of injuries. You have a subjective injury and an objective injury. So just from a business standpoint, like even, I don't know anything about your business, but I imagine that there's high net worth clients and not high net worth clients, right? There's going to be some binary way you can look at everything. For us in injuries, objective injuries cannot be challenged. There is no defense expert that could come out and say that bone is not broken.
Yeah.
That disc is not displaced by 4 millimeters between C4, C5, right? So that scar is not on his face. If an objective injury is something that can be seen, and so if you look at a scar,
can be seen, can be proven,
absolutely. So see a scar, I can see with the naked eye. A broken bone, I can see on an X-ray. A disc displacement, I can see on an MRI. And there are a few objective injuries that can't necessarily be seen, but there's testing that's done that cannot be challenged by the greatest experts in the world. And so those are the cases that obviously have more value. If you just say my neck and back hurts, but I don't have any way to prove that other than your testimony, that case is not going to have the same value as my neck hurts and I have a 6 millimeter disc displacement at C4, C5 that requires a fusion. That's, that there's obviously going to be a lot of difference in the value of that case. So what we're looking at is, can you go through that series of treatment and do everything that the doctor is asking you to do so that we can get you paid fairly? Now, if the doctor comes back and says, hey, Rob, you're fine. Nothing's wrong with you. Great. We can still help you. We'll get you a little recovery. But if the doctor comes back and says, hey, you know what? You may need surgery. Or if you don't want surgery, you may need an injection, what we call ESI, epidural steroid injection, because that'll help relieve your pain. Well, those things provide a lot of value to the case. And we want to make sure you're going to do that so that we can get you what you hired us to get you.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
See, I don't know anything about any of this. This is interesting. Let's take a break real quick. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then when we come back, I don't know what I want to talk about. I do know what I want to talk about.
Okay.
So we have business owners who own trucks and stuff out on the roads. All right.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there. Some of them are sitting there going, well, why does Rob have Dave on, man? He's like the enemy. I want to talk about that.
Okay.
I think that'd
That's
be fun.
good. Yeah.
So we'll do that when we come back. So we'll be right back. Give us a second. Whether it was one generation ago or 7, more than likely as an American, an ancestor of yours took an extreme level of risk in order to create a better way of life for themselves, their family, and eventually you. Most families have a story to tell, at least one story. My family ended up here in Texas when their wagon broke down in Del Rio. The wagon train they were a part of continued westward only to be completely massacred. I'm Rob Schultz, founder of Schultz Wealth. Our clients are entrepreneurs and business owners, the beneficiaries and true torchbearers of our American pioneer legacy. Our clients are not afraid of change. They are hopeful about the future, and they create wealth for themselves, their people, in this country through innovation, creativity, and hard work. Our job at Schultz Wealth is to help make sure it counts for something. If you're a successful business owner, let Schultz Wealth help you to the next level and beyond. All right, we're back. And as promised, you're just a bad guy, right? Because you're just going to cost me money on my insurance for my fleet of trucks. Yeah. Come on, Dave. What are you doing?
It's all relative. I will tell you this. When I was working for the insurance company and I said I was going to law school, started plaintiff's firm, everybody said you're going to the dark side. And then I went to law school and I went to my first trial lawyers meeting and somebody introduced me as a former insurance adjuster and they said, you came from the dark side.
Right.
So it's all relative.
For sure.
But it's funny. I say this all the time, kind of jokingly so, but it's true. There is a relationship that exists between, insurance carriers, risk managers, all these things and plaintiff's attorneys. Right. Now, because I'm a plaintiff's attorney, I'm going to give you my very biased opinion. And that is that I think trial lawyers make the world safer. I think the cars that we drive are as safe as they are because of trial lawyers. I think the cribs that our babies sleep in are like that because of trial lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the products, the toys that our kids play with are as safe as they are because of trial lawyers, because of the risk of what companies face if they're going to put profit over safety. And
that's a strong statement.
And let's face it,
it's true. I mean, so that does happen.
Absolutely.
It's a broken world.
It's a capitalist economy that we all thrive in.
Yeah.
And that just happens, right? And so that's what I think about that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that everybody who drives trucks is a negligent driver or is out there doing something nefarious or something that they shouldn't do. Of course, we find a lot of them that are. But in the end, most people are good. And it doesn't really matter what your profession is. However, if you do something wrong, then the law entitles the person who was wrong to a recovery or a remedy. And in America, that's recognized in dollars and cents. And so what I will tell everybody, obviously, if you hear our ads and we're talking about big truck accidents, which we talk about all the time, and they're probably a lot more prevalent than the average person is aware of. They're obviously dangerous. It's 20,000 pounds of rolling death. So there's a lot of things that need to happen in order for people to stay safe. And for the most part, the majority of truck drivers keep us safe. And fortunately for all of them, I can't get anything that the law doesn't entitle my client to get, right? And I think that's a big misconception. All the bad jokes are about trial lawyers. But at the end of the day,
some of them are kind of funny.
They're hilarious. I got a few of them. But at the end of the day, there's a case that my clients have, and I've been hired to kind of advocate for their position and get what I can.
Which they really need, if you think about it.
There's no doubt about it.
I mean, because it's a David and Goliath type scenario in many cases. Certainly, if you're up against a really big insurance company,
absolutely, it's got all the money in the world. They can hire all the defense lawyers in the world. I tell my clients, like, this is a journey, and they're going to send us more paper than the old phone books used to look like.
Sure.
And we got to read all of them. We got to go through all of it. But at the end of the day, we're going to make sure that we don't get trapped in missing any deadlines or not responding to something we need to respond to. We're going to build a case. And their advantage is in how they beat us up before trial. Our advantage is we get to talk to people, 6 or 12 people who sit in the box. Yeah. And we get to tell them your story. And in the end, all they have to do is believe us. And if you can believe what my client went through, and if you can believe that it could have all been avoided, save for the negligence of, this truck driver or whoever is involved, then we win. And if you don't believe that, we lose. That's
it's
that's
your representation. Now, and of course, I was just kidding earlier. You're doing really good work.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
You really
I appreciate it.
And we joke around because we have a friend, a mutual friend who runs.
That's right.
A really, really large trucking company,
and he's all about safety. But
he's more about safety than anybody I've ever known.
And it's amazing. And he'll tell you there are companies that he could change overnight, and he's done that, right? Because he puts this emphasis on safety first. Isn't that a novel thought, right? Not profit first.
It's so cool.
Safety first.
We can say who it is. It's Rick Larkin.
That's right.
Our friend Rick. Guy. And, he is Mr. Safety, and he has his own scene, online and on radio and stuff where he does all this. And I tell you, when you talk to Rick about safety, sure, you can certainly see where from a financial business standpoint, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But he is emotionally and very, very, he makes it such a high priority. He's so concerned about what trucks can do on the road.
Right.
Because absolutely. Like you said, there's so much bigger than everybody else.
And that personality trait that you just talked about, I think it's overlooked by a lot of business owners, right? Because everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and make money and do all of this. Right. And you can miss out on, hey, if I can just get passionate about this thing that is the source of my business and develop that and make sure that I'm delivering the best product or that I have the most substantive knowledge on how this happens, money kind of takes care of itself. right? So kind of
Yeah,
I know that obviously there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to make your business work, but in the end, it starts with, am I really good at making these burgers? And am I really good about standing back and seeing how people enjoy these burgers? And if
And do I
am,
feel good about what these burgers are doing?
yeah, absolutely. And so that Rick has mastered that and has obviously done very well for himself and his family. And I'd like to think that, we kind of carry that same approach to what is it we do. Like, we're helping people that otherwise would not have a remedy, unless they call somebody who does what we do. But, that's a pretty big deal. And that's why I tell my folks, everybody we deal with probably got 8,000 cases open in inventory at any one time. And all 8,000 of them, it's probably the biggest thing going on in their life is this case.
8,000 cases?
Yeah.
How many attorneys do y'all have?
Actually, there's 17. We just hired another one, but we've got 140 people on staff, roughly, somewhere between 135.
So I got to circle back around. Just the operations part of this is major.
It is. Yeah, it is. But it's all very, again, process oriented. So, when these folks leave our intake and they go to our case managers, like, our case managers know we got to call them every 2 weeks. We've got to make sure that we're holding their hand throughout this treatment process. We got to resolve property damage, rental car issues, all these little ancillary issues that are associated with car wreck. And then we got to make sure they're compliant with treatment. And we got to be answering these questions that maybe they're scared to ask their doctor about. And make sure that their doctors are aware of all the things that they're complaining about. So if they have something that needs to be diagnosed, it does get diagnosed and treated. And then we negotiate it. And then if it doesn't happen in negotiation, if we don't sell it, it goes to litigation. And there's processes throughout the whole conveyor belt, so to speak.
And there wasn't really a model to go by at all, I wouldn't think, because like you said, y'all were kind of the first to be on the radio like that. And obviously there are attorney firms at this scale, but not very many.
Yeah, no. But, and I will say, in fairness, like, I looked up to these guys, the way Kobe looked up to Michael Jordan.
Sure,
I would see guys like Brian Loncar and Jim Adler. And And I tell the story all the time when I was in law school and I would study and get sleepy. I always studied in one of the classrooms that was empty. And I would grab a marker and write on the dry erase board 400. And I would just circle it until I woke up because somebody told me Loncar used to sign up 400 clients a month. And that was just like, I had to get there. And so we're not charting new territory. Obviously, there were people before us that did it, but certainly there's this self-education piece that I think gets overlooked a lot by business owners, right? It doesn't even matter if you go to the best business school in the world, you get an MBA. Like, you got to read and you got to ask people, hey, what are you doing? And you got to, you and I sit on like a mastermind together and we're kind of tossing. And it doesn't really matter that our businesses are different because there's fundamentals to every business. And so I can learn, and iron sharpens iron, and all of those things you just got to be doing. And if you're not, then your competitors are doing it. And, you're going to lose. I don't like to lose.
No, you like to win.
Yeah, I do.
You do. Yeah, you like to win.
But I don't win all the time, but I feel it when I don't.
Yeah. So, and we were just talking before we started, about you just constantly changing and shifting and transitioning and so forth. And so you're well past that 400 number.
Oh yeah.
Still not satisfied.
Yeah. No, still got to go. I tell people all the time when they talk about not being happy, I had to learn to appreciate the milestones, and every business owner should learn to do that. Because listen, you set your goal here, and you start to get there, and before you get it, you set it here, you change it.
I know.
And then you get here, and you change it again, and before you know it, you feel like you haven't done anything.
Yeah, you never reward yourself, you never celebrate it. Yeah, that's pretty typical, I think.
Yeah.
Very important.
And it's super important. I remember going to this when it hit me. I went to the bank, and I was dropping off my bank book, and the lady came to the window and she said, "Hey, Mr. Godsey, how are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm good." I can't remember her name now. And I gave her my deal, and she said, "I'll be right back." She did all the deposits, and she brought my bank book back. And I drove off, and I said, I come here so often, the lady at the bank knows my name.
Yeah.
That's a milestone. But before that hit me, I was like, oh, God, we're not doing this. We got to do this. We got to do that. It's just, I was never satisfied. And so I learned at that moment to appreciate it. And, Now we've been blessed enough, like she wouldn't know my name now. We got somebody to do all the deposits for us, right?
You
So
delegated that out.
it's the
now.
next phase,
you
right?
don't go to the bank anymore.
No. Or the post office. Trust me, I used to carry demands like this to the post office and sit at the self-serve machine, pissing off everybody behind me. So yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
The changes.
So let's talk about change.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, you and I, because you seem very astute and understand that things change as we go forward. And your business is going to change.
Yeah.
Your business is going to change just due to the fact, just like everybody from a technology standpoint, right?
Yeah. Cars are getting smarter and safer. All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a good thing.
It is.
It's just, but it will change.
But it's a threat.
Yeah.
Right? And you got to.
It's going to change insurance. What's going to change insurance companies for sure?
There's no doubt. I joke about us being in the same playing field with insurance companies because they rely on us.
Yeah.
And really they do. Like they're able to sell policies because they say, hey, the Dave Gotzeys of the world are going to come sue us. Or they're going to sue you if you don't buy your insurance.
I have to have a policy, because, absolutely.
And I can't demean them because, I got to have a pocket of recovery.
Right.
If my client gets hurt. But this, autonomous vehicles, that's a threat to insurance companies. What if the legislature comes out and says, well, no longer is an individual who's driving an autonomous vehicle going to be liable, right? We're going to hold the manufacturer liable.
Well, so there you go. Yeah.
So if I'm that person, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to buy an autonomous vehicle so I don't have to buy insurance. Now the insurance company's not selling policies. And now when that car goes bad and hurt somebody, then they call me. Yeah, that's a great case to have because now I can go after a manufacturer who's got a big pocket of recovery.
So it just changes a little bit.
It changes, but what's going to change is the frequency, the volume of car accidents are going to go down.
Right.
Because most of what happens in a car accident is human error. Mm-hmm. And so if you remove the human error, you're just relying on machine error, then volume's going to go down. So
how often does it, like in a non-autonomous car, like the wreck is not human error, like ever?
It can happen, right? So, but those cases are mostly products liability. It's kind of what I just described. But 9 times out of 10, like cell phones are the new drunk driver, right? If you look at all the work that Mothers Against Drunk Driving did, like drunk driving has gone way down. And we all applaud that, right? That's a great thing.
Great.
I mean, it's still out there. And we handle a lot of cases that are like that, but it's way less than it was if you look at the data. But the distracted driving, I mean, my goodness. I mean, I can drive down the highway and so can you. And you can pick out who's on their phone.
Oh, you can tell, yeah.
Because they're drifting in your lane or they're speeding up into traffic that's slowing down, So those types of things are keeping us in business. So interestingly enough, the phone manufacturers, they've come out with little kind of knee-jerk Band-Aid reactions to it, but no one's come out and said, hey, we're going to cut your phone off while you're driving your car. And
they could do that.
They could, but geez, what kind of money would that cost people?
Cost you?
Yeah, cost me, for sure, and everybody else, So, but if they fix the cell phone issue, I don't know what we gotta pivot.
Shift.
That's it.
It is the new drunk driving.
It is. Oh,
it looks
no doubt about it.
Like when we used to be able to, because you don't see it as often.
Right.
But it used to be, that person's drunk.
That's it.
That's
it.
Now it's
and
like,
guess
that
what
person's
juries hate. Juries hate drunk drivers. And juries hate distracted drivers. Never mind the fact that by the numbers, most people who give big jury awards on drunk driver cases have been people who drink and drive. And most people who give big awards on distracted driving are people who will use their cell phone when they leave the jury box. It's the most hypocritical thing going.
You got to explain that to me. What's going on there? I mean, it's
it's
some human nature thing going on.
Well, there's this thing that we use in the law called the reptile effect. And listen, politicians do it all the time, and maybe they call it that, maybe they don't. But whenever you can associate with a group, then you have a much bigger chance of pushing your narrative, right? And so if we think back, we just come out of political season. If you think back to, hey, if I can associate myself with evangelicals, or if I can associate with myself with people who believe marriage is this way and not that way, or any of the other blanks, right? We could fill in the blank with 100 different things. The same thing is true when people break the law. Like if I'm in there picking a jury, I'm going to say, how many of us agree that we should follow the law and that they're written to protect us? Everybody's going to raise their hand. Now I'm going to drive home those narratives so that when I get into trying my case, we're going to be talking about we're here because somebody didn't follow those rules. Okay. Never mind the fact that all the data that's out there that suggests what can happen when you drink and drive or when you're distracted by your phone. And then these people are like, hey, I'm associated with this group, so I'm going to penalize this person. Mm-hmm. Then those same people will leave. I got out jury duty early. I'm going to meet my friend at happy hour, going to have a few beers, and then I'm going to text on the way home. It's just this crazy human phenomenon where, I'm a big reader, and I like Robert Edwards' 48 Laws of Power, Laws of Human Nature. And it's funny when he describes every personality characteristic and trait, as you're reading the book, he's saying towards the end, I know you're reading this and you're saying, oh yeah, that's Rob who acts like that, or that's Justin who does that, or that's Joe who does, but really it's you.
It's you, yeah.
We're everything, right? Some of us have more propensity to be one way or another, but in the end, it's all in us, right?
It's all
including hypocrisy. Yeah. And one point at you is three back at me at least.
No doubt. No doubt.
So, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, man, this has been good having you on.
Appreciate it, man. I'm glad to be here. This has been fun.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again because this is interesting. I really respect everything that you've done with your business.
And that's the mutual feeling.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Yeah. What a cool ride. Sounds like a lot of exciting things going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we're transitioning, pivot. It's always pivoting, and we're a little bit more litigation focused than we have been in the past. And what's funny is that, litigation generates more revenue. But again, as I was talking about earlier, when you go back to saying, hey, what's going to produce the best product or service for your client? That's really what it is. And then as a result of that, we're generating more revenue, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah. So
we're helping more people.
So basically taking it to the finish line.
That's right. That's right. And it doesn't necessarily have to go to trial to be in litigation. We've just got to file a lawsuit and build a case, So if you're hurt and you have a disc displacement that requires injections, by the science, that's not a cure. You're going to need more injections down the road. In a lot of cases, there are life care planners who will come and say, you're going to miss out on X amount of money as a result of this treatment you're going to need in the future. There are doctors who will say, these are the future procedures that you're going to need. Well, all those things cost money. So I may have $40,000 in medical bills, but I can have a $250,000 damage model based upon all of the things that I'm going to miss out on.
Oh, and it's real too.
Yeah, and it's all real.
Yeah.
So, you'd be amazed at how many people sat in my office and said, man, I'm not the kind of person that hires lawyers, but, I'm really hurt.
Yeah.
Because that's been the narrative that's been pushed by the tort reformers, that only bad people hire lawyers until they need them, right? And then it's not so bad after all.
I mean, you just need representation.
Absolutely.
I need it.
In every walk of life.
I have lawyers, in my life that I rely on heavily. Yeah. Compliance issues, just business issues, contract issues, all that kind of stuff. Because, maybe going off a sidetrack, but, your business, the law, and the language that you speak is a foreign language.
Absolutely.
To me. Okay. But it's not a business language.
Contract law.
Yeah.
Except for what's in releases. Is a foreign language to me. So we use lawyers for everything. And that's another thing that business owners should know, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Be good at what you're good at.
Yeah.
Right? We call it staying in your lane. But I'm not going to know how the market moves the way you're going to know. Why would I go invest my own money?
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
And then why am I going to go and, redline a real estate contract?
That's right.
I mean,
when there are people out there who do that. And then I think, economy is this interesting thing, right? Mm-hmm. I think when you use people when they are qualified to give you the service that you're using them for, then that makes people use you more, right? Because it generates more within the economy. And I'm not just talking metaphysics, even physically, right? If you do more business, you have more money to do certain things, and you give your money to your kids and they go buy shoes, and Foot Locker says we got to hire more people to sell more shoes.
Man, that's the economy right there.
That's the economy. Yeah. And so I don't really get caught up in partisanship or any of that stuff, because I just learned a long time ago, no matter who wins, I got to get up and go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can't say, woo, they won, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm not doing
and I can't say, oh, they lost, the world's over, right? I just got to go make it happen for me. And that's my approach. I don't push that on anybody, but I just think in business, if you're not doing that, then you might be setting yourself up to get your feelings hurt.
Just make sure you're on it for sure.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thanks for being on.
Rob, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
This was fun.
If somebody wants to get in contact with you and just kind of pick your brain on all the success you've had and so forth, what's a good way for them to reach out?
So if you're in Dallas or Houston, it's 214, which is Dallas, Fort Worth, or Tarrant County is 817. And then I Got Hit is a number, which is 446-8338. If you're in Houston, 713 or 281, I Got Hit. If you're outside those markets, 1-800, I Got Hit. We've got all those numbers.
You've just got it covered.
And then the easiest email to remember is just my first name, David, at IJustGotHit.com.
Okay.
So, and it'll get right to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today with Dave Godsey and getting some incredible insight into his business and what he does. If you know of people that you think ought to be on this show, let me know. Always looking for great stories, great success stories, and folks to tell their story. So just let us know. And other than that, I hope you have a great week. Take care.
Take care.